If you want to see your name at the beginning of all of our videos, as well as see exclusive content here on the homestead, please feel free to join our Patreon. Memberships start off at just $1 a month. And as always, thank you for your support.
So this was a comment left on my video about breeding for color, and I absolutely love this comment. So I wanted to talk more about it. So keeping in mind that color is never our main goal. Especially when we're first starting out, we want to build the best shaped rabbits that we can. We want to follow SOP for type, for both body and fur, and then we move on for color. And then the more consistent you are with your lines, the more likely you are to get the colors you want. In comes this comment. When you first start out, you might just need to buy a rabbit that carries the color you want. Let's use my silver foxes as an example. Chocolate is a newly accepted color into the SOP. And although it's been around a while, it hasn't been perfected like black has been. Out in my barn, I have quite a few chocolate carriers, Nina being one of them. The goal is to take Nina and breed her to my chocolate carrying buck to get chocolate babies. Because I want chocolate silver fox, but I didn't find stock that was chocolate in color that had the best body type. So what I did was I found a black rabbit that back in her pedigree had chocolate in it. And the big kicker is, in order to know you have a carrier before you breed them, one of the parents has to be a chocolate. Her dad's a chocolate, therefore Nina is a carrier of chocolate. So what I'll do in order to get a chocolate, I'll breed my two chocolate carriers together. Hopefully that first litter, they get a buck or a doe that is a chocolate. And what I'll do is I'll breed that chocolate back to my black lines that carry chocolate to get the better body type out of my black lines and to get the color of chocolate. And the idea is that you continue to do that and move down the line till you get a better type. And you're producing chocolates with that good body type that you would normally see in the more popular color. And then what you start doing is you start removing the blacks from your program. So you start removing the more dominant color from your program, only keeping the recessive color in your program. So you have that nice barn you built, and now you're painting it. And down the line, if and when you need a crossbreeding, you might need to do that again. You might need to get a very well-typed dominant base color that has a recessive carrying in the lines, and sometimes you can't even find a good recessive carrier, but once you have the colors in your barn, you're good to go. You just repeat the process over. Either way, this comment was just a brilliant point, and I love it. To the person who was asking about colors in their breeding program, good luck. And I don't think you mentioned what color you were looking for. If you're telling us what color you want to specialize in, we can help you in your program choose the best carriers or what to avoid. In the grand scheme of things, does color matter? Absolutely not. There's really not a point to having colors if you're not doing anything with them unless you have favorite colors. Now, there are some people that breed for certain colored pelts, like with Californians, and in the SOP, you'll see that they have usable portions of the pelt as a part of the SOP. So if you're just breeding for meat, it's not a big deal. However, we breed for show. And in the show, a lot of times color is split up. So for instance, Moose is a blue silver fox. The COD is still being approved, but we could take him to show as long as the secretary approves it and the judge can kind of give their opinion on him. But he cannot be shown against any other silver foxes for best of breed. Once he is approved with a COD, or rather the blue color is, then he can compete against everyone else. So in theory, we'll have a blue class, we'll have a black class, and then we'll have a chocolate class. Then the best blue, the best chocolate, and the best black would go up against each other for best of breed and best opposite. But we still have to get that COD approved. In a more popular breed like Mini Rex, where there's like 30 different colors, you will have multiple classes of different colors. You'll have a best of group, a best of variety. So for instance, there will be a class just for casters. And normally there's enough of the color to where you'll have a group of casters that are junior does, junior bucks, and senior does. So you'll have the best castor, the best chinchilla, the best lynx for best of breed. But looking it up, it looks like there's 17 approved varieties of Mini Rex. But when it comes to us, we specialize in certain colors, because if we didn't specialize in certain colors because there's 17 varieties of Mini Rex, we would be all over the place. We want to focus on a very specific type. In this case, I'm really big into castors, even though I threaten to get rid of them on the daily. Lynx, their broken counterparts, and blue-eyed whites. My black and my broken blacks, I don't specialize when it comes to show. I use them as outcrosses to improve my lines. So that's why you see a lot of show breeders talk about specializing in certain colors or breeding for certain colors. So last night I was asked about hay and if I feed it or not, and I was like, it's kind of complicated and has a lot of nuance. And the reason there's so much nuance when it comes to feeding hay is how much goes into rabbit nutrition. This is a single reference, and it has this much of the book dedicated to nutrition. And one of the first things they go over is hay, and why you should or shouldn't feed hay or what it is used for. But more than that, though, if we go into the beginning of the book, so when we get back into the beginning of the book and they start getting into just the beginning of nutrition and water, we have the quote up here. It is recommended that the primary source of nutrition comes from a commercially produced pelleted feed. And that's because the nutrients are measured. And it's best to keep condition on measured feed. Now, when we get back into the nutrition part of the book, it gets into the nitty-gritty of how people go in condition and how to finish out an animal. When it comes to the hay section of things, it's like a last-minute thought when bringing an animal into better condition for show. Not for producing meat, not for creating better animals, but just the icing on the cake. And this book just gets into the nitty-gritty. You can feed hay, you can feed roughage, you can feed things out of your garden. It's just the question of how much is going to bring your rabbit into proper condition with the least amount of problems. And if y'all are interested, I can get into rabbit nutrition more and what is recommended when it comes to how they digest and their anatomy and how to finish them out. As you can see on this page, we have examples of that. But it's going to take a lot of videos because there is so much nuance. So I am not opposed to people feeding scraps from the garden per se. But what really turned my stomach one day on one of the meat rabbit groups was when somebody explained that their grow-outs only ate scraps. And they would just throw them random things from their garden. They wouldn't do any pellet, and they were in a tractor, so they ate grass. But in order to keep any kind of condition on those rabbits, they would feed them a 5-gallon bucket full of scraps per day. And that was insane to me because of how delicate a rabbit's digestive system is. In fact, if you look at the ARBA's A Guide to Raising Better Rabbits and Cavies on page 89, one of the quotes is actually, upset of the balance of the microorganisms in the cm may increase the incidence of diarrhea causing premature moltings, loss of flesh condition, and death. Which the loss of condition and death are the things that scare the absolute crap out of me. And when we start talking about rabbit nutrition, one of my very favorite paragraphs when it comes to this book is on page 89 as well, when it talks about fixed formulated versus least cost formulation. In that, and I quote, "The health status of the digestive system of the rabbit is dependent upon maintaining a good, healthy balance of the microorganisms in the cm. Ideally, most owners would like to feed the rabbit the same quality of feed, the same quantity of feed at the same time each day. When necessary to change diets, many will gradually mix feeds for several days to prevent any disruption of microflora in the cm to prevent digestive upsets." So I do this quite often as well. If I have a new feed, I do ratios just like you would hear with dog food. So I'll take that feed that I have been feeding, mix it 75-25 with the new feed, 50-50, and then 75-25 until putting them on the new feed 100%. However, with that being said, when we talk about formulation and pellet, it is more expensive than compared to somebody who is picking out the scraps from their garden. And some people see that picking out scraps is more cost efficient and therefore risk versus reward. Reward is higher than risk. But in the same book, about 100 pages on, we start going over diseases and things that have to do with sicknesses when it comes to GI gut stasis and health, showing that in a lot of ways that inconsistencies within feed can cause issues. One of the biggest things that we see when it comes to rabbits that aren't eating a consistent diet and they're introduced to a lot of leafy greens is bloat. We also see GI stasis and diarrhea, all of which are fatal to rabbits if not treated appropriately. And seeing as though rabbits are really good at hiding diseases, a lot of times it's too late to fix when we do find it. So the first thing we really want to get into when it comes to rabbit nutrition is how many calories they burn. On average, to keep maintenance, you have to feed 953 kcals per pound for the average rabbit and 1,134 kcals for a nursing doe per pound. And that's just to keep maintenance. Now, as we get deeper into nutrition and we start talking about splits such as protein, carbs, dietary fiber, it gets more nitty-gritty. For instance, protein is needed for all forms of rabbits. It's not only used to grow, but maintain a healthy condition as well. When we're looking at nursing does and growing kits, we want our protein to be about 18%. That protein is going to fuel the growth of your kits, make them larger. Without that protein, we're going to see issues with kits in that they're not going to fill into the right condition and grow the way that they're supposed to. But as the animal gets older, they definitely don't need that 18% feed. Normally, when we look at an 18% feed, it is a milk pellet. A milk pellet is normally used when it comes to nursing does and growing kits, not only for the high protein content, but the extra minerals and dietary nutrition that will give the doe more nutrients to help nurse those kits. Not to mention it's more expensive per pound compared to a 17 or 16% feed. And it's not needed if a doe is not nursing and after the kits hit a certain age range. Now, the question of age range depends on what breeds you are breeding as well as what lines you have. Some breeders will free feed until the rabbits are 4 months of age, others will do it until they hit a senior weight. And it all just depends on observation of your lines as to what is best as you learn them. Moving on, when it comes to protein, when we talk about an adult rabbit, we want around a 16% feed. Give or take a percentage depending on your lines, your breed, and what you're using them for. And again, to stay in maintenance, we want to stay around that 953 kcals per pound. And the way you're going to figure that out is by looking at your feed bags. But the only way to get a true measure of how much you're feeding is weight by pound. So you're going to take your feed, weigh it on a scale, and then give it. And then you're going to observe your lines. Now, the reason that you're going to want to keep your protein up to around 16 to 15% is for condition of the rabbit. When we get lower in that percentiles, what we're going to see is a lack of definition of muscle as well as a less definement of coat quality. Because there's two sides to the spectrum, too much protein and too little, both which are detrimental to the health of your rabbits. We're going to need another part. So it has been a hot minute since I have talked about profit margins and making money when it comes to rabbits. And I've gotten quite a few comments today that keep mentioning that I am making money. I wish I was making money. My husband wishes I was making money. With our setup, we do not make of the monies. The only way a lot of times you are going to be profitable within raising rabbits is if you have a commercial setup and you are selling either for raw consumption to animals or you get special licensing, go through state inspections, and get a license to sell for human consumption. And even then, you're going to need a very large setup to see any kind of profit and not just to break even. If we're talking carcass rate right now from my local area, carcass rate is going for $8.50 to $9 per pound. Which by the end of the day, when you get everything measured out, when you have fryers, you're barely breaking even on your litters. So instead of selling any kind of meat, what I normally do is I just butcher them out for myself. And it feeds my family and my dogs. Now you might be asking, well, what about sales of live animals? I don't do pet sales, so that takes it right off the table, which is where you see a lot of breeders make any kind of profit margin. So if we're looking at sales for breeders to 4-H kids or other show barns, I'm not selling that many. Maybe 20 within a year. And if we break those down into my most popular sales, that being Rex rabbits, I'm only making about $50 per rabbit. And on the top end, I am only making about $100 per rabbit. Those 20 rabbits, for the most part, aren't going to be paying my feed bills. Considering that my feed bills for all of my animals on my property is about $400 to $500 a month, depending on if we get hay or not. And that's just for feed bills. That doesn't take into consideration equipment or vet bills or anything of the sorts. I do this because I enjoy raising rabbits. And I like showing rabbits. So if you want to make any kind of profit, I suggest staying away from any breeds that aren't commercial types that are grown specifically for weight gain. So Californians and New Zealands. All of the fun breeds that I have, such as my Rex and my Silver Foxes, are not the most efficient. And in the end, that would just hurt my bottom line if I was looking for money. But, and this might be controversial, if someone is raising meat rabbits on a commercial setting, I don't think they should be villainized for making money. The only difference is these are cute and fluffy in most people's minds. And most people don't see them as food. Which is absolutely ridiculous, because these guys are delicious. I am really hoping that Penguin is going to have a round of babies, because her last litter did not go well, and to be honest, I absolutely adore the pairing between Penguin and Strawberry that they normally have. But when it does come down to Penguin, this will be her final strike as a mother. Just between strikes in the past, her losing an entire litter last breeding, and if she missed this time. But on the same hand, I have 6 does for Mini Rex when I'm only supposed to have 4. So I definitely have too many Mini Rex does for my normal quotas. I just can't help myself when it comes to Mini Rex.